All right, we are at the top of the hour. Hello, everybody. It's morning where I am. Hello, wherever you are. I'm glad that you're here. I'm super, super, super excited about this event. So I'm just going to say a couple of things about Library Juice to get us started, and then I'm going to turn it over to our two conversation havers. My name is Sophie Ziegler. I'm the events coordinator here at Library Juice. And I just wanted to again say a couple of things about what we're up to at Library Juice. We have Library Juice Academy, which is our first arm that we tend to talk about. This is online professional development for all of us in the library ecosystem writ large. So, professionals, paraprofessionals, archivists, all of us doing information work. These are courses on a wide variety of topics, with new courses coming every month. You can do a la carte, you can follow our tracks through all sorts of different certificates for all the things that you thought maybe you didn't need to know, but then your job changed, or that we didn't learn while we were in library school, and then we suddenly realized that we need to know it now. This You can find more about all the courses that are coming out and all the events going on at libraryjuiceacademy.com. Secondly, we have Library Juice Press, which puts out books on critical angles, largely of LIS, again writ large, and publishes books like the one that we're here to celebrate today. We also have a number of journals. So do take a look. We've got a wonderful back catalog of titles, wonderful titles coming out all the time. If you're interested in learning more about us, we are an imprint of Litwin Books, so you can find more about us at litwinbooks.com. And then finally, the third arm of what we do is Library Juice Connections, which is what's bringing us all here today. So we work with authors who are published through the press. We work with instructors who work with the academy, and we also work with community members writ large. Again, in general, for topics that people want conversations around and might not have had the chance to do so in other
Mhm.
spaces. So if you are interested in learning more about us, and I hope you are, take a look at our website at libraryjuiceconnections.org, where you can see a lot and ever more growing collection of recorded presentations. You can use the contact us to talk about an event that you would like to hold. We always love to hear from you. And you can see all the wonderful things that are happening soon. There's always a lot of really, really interesting things happening soon. And with that, I am done talking about Library Juice. And I'm very, very, very excited at this point to talk about who we have with us. And I'll do very short introductions before I turn it over to them. John M. Budd, the author that we're here to celebrate today, is Professor Emeritus with the University of Missouri. He has been an active member of the American Library Association, the Association for Library and Information Science Education, for which he served as president, and the Association of Information Science and Technology. He is the author of more than 150 publications, including the very interesting books, I think, Information and Consciousness in the Library as Forum in the Social Media Age. And also joining us today is John T.F. Burgess. John Burgess is an associate professor, newly associate professor. Congratulations, John. And coordinator for teaching excellence at the University of Alabama School of Library and Information Studies. John is a virtue ethicist with a background in moral philosophy and pastoral care, which informs his approach to the LIS classroom. And John developed and teaches courses in information ethics, information policy, sustainability, and theory, construction, and epistemology, as well as more traditional MLIS offerings in academic libraries and information literacy. Welcome to both of you. Welcome, Johns. And at this point, John Budd, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Sophie. And I do recommend that everybody check out litwinbooks.com. It is a great source for some excellent work that's being done and has been done in our field. I'm John Budd, Professor Emeritus, University of Missouri, and we're here to have a conversation about the new book, How Should We Live? Ethics and Morals for Library and Information Work. There is a colon in there, and I should mention to all academics out there, when you write titles, you have to have a colon in that. There was even a farce published decades ago in JASIS entitled Titular Colonicity as a
Yes.
Measure of Scholarly Activity. So I'm here today with John Burgess, as Sophie mentioned, at the University of Alabama, and we're going to have a conversation to begin with and then open it up for questions and possibly even some answers. But
Well,
we're good at questions.
thank you, John. I have to confess, I read that article on titular colonicity and didn't realize it was a farce. I took it as gospel, and thank you for clarifying that after all these years. As John and Sophie mentioned, we're here on the occasion of the release of what I believe will be a tremendously impactful work in LAS professional ethics. And this is both a celebration of the long work that has been put into it, and also a possibility to sort of unpack it and talk about its impetus. And so, to that end, that's where I would love to start our conversation, John. Can you tell us a little bit about what motivated you to write How Should We Live, and tell us a little bit about what sets it apart from other entries in the LAS ethics field?
Thank you, John, and congratulations on your promotion and tenure too.
Thanks
It's
again.
well deserved. This interest in this topic goes back, about a generation. I have been interested in ethics for many years and have been interested in philosophy more broadly for even longer.
Mm,
But when I got to the University of Missouri, I was dismayed and excited to find out that they didn't have a course in information ethics, so I could develop one. And that was really the beginnings of my engagement with ethical literature, ethical thought, and so forth. And I began the course, as I believe all courses on information ethics should begin, with Aristotle
mm,
and a selection from Nicomachean Ethics, and then delved into more recent literature. And it was a problems-based course.
mm,
We looked at hypothetical and real issues of the day, and it could be revised time after time whenever it's offered, um, dealing with the workplace, the overall atmosphere of an ethical imperative for information and library work, etc. So that got me started thinking about this sort of thing. From there came a couple of articles that I published one on normative and practical ethics
mhm,
for librarianship that dates back, oh gosh, almost 20 years now,
mhm, mhm.
which tells you how long I've been thinking about this topic. Uh, but I continued to do reading in ethics and ethical work and built a substantial personal library. My debit card thanks me for that, of ethical works from ancient times
Mm,
to the present.
mhm.
And that's what the book essentially encompasses, everything beginning from Confucius and his take on virtue,
Mhm.
all the way to last week, just about,
Yeah,
and what's being written and thought about in the ethical world. So that's where it comes from.
yeah. And so thinking about the question of what distinguishes it from other works, I think we can kind of turn to the post colonic um, part of the title. That's probably not how I wanted to phrase it. Ethics and morals. So tell me a little bit about how this text prepares students. Not just students are going to be reading this work, obviously, but in an educational context. How does this prepare them to understand the role of ethics and morals in information work?
Well, as I mentioned, it's kind of a sweeping look at ethical thought over time. And throughout the work, I try to make connections with today's state of librarianship, libraries, and the informational world more broadly.
Yeah.
And it begins, in effect, with a chapter examining what the state of affairs is today with ethics and the ethical state of affairs, you might say, that we face today, to sort of ground the work in something that looks familiar and will seem familiar to every reader, regardless of where they're from, what their current workplace situation may be, and then delve into the long history of ethical thought, beginning with the next chapter on virtue ethics, which is right up your alley.
Yes, indeed.
And I'm sure you could have written a better second chapter than I did.
I am flattered by that estimation, and but have what, as you know, was fortunate enough to read a proposal of the work, and I can speak to its appropriate level of comprehension with the early chapters that I read. And so, like, thinking about what is pressing about ethics in the current information environment, I think every time thinks that it is in a moment of ethical crisis, but I think we really are in a moment of ethical crisis. And so, like, tell our audience a little bit about the intended impact that this work is to have beyond it being informative. How will it prepare information workers to practice more ethically as well?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more that we are in a serious ethical moment at this particular time, worldwide and profession-wide. One of the things, I'll digress just a bit. I had an opportunity to serve 4 years on ALA's Committee on Professional Ethics.
Yes.
And it was right at the time that the 9th principle was published, which is basically ALA's diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. And I think it was brilliantly written. It is informative, and it also is a guide to action. So taking that as sort of a stepping off point, I wanted the book to be a kind of guide to action, which is why the title is How Should We Live?
Yes.
I thought about alternative titles like How Should We Act? But I really believe that we are called upon to live ethically and responsibly. So the book tries to insinuate that impetus throughout each chapter of the book, and culminating in the final chapter. I don't want to give it away because I know everybody is out there is just
No
is just
spoilers.
waiting to acquire the book and to read it thoroughly and closely. But the last chapter basically is my recommendation for ethical action today. And that's all I'll say about that.
I love it. I love it. So we won't spoil that, but we will then start with the beginning exploration of virtue ethics. So, along this line of how we should live, one of the great questions that virtue ethics and classical Greek ethics in general encourage us to think of is, what is the good life? And I've long been interested in my own scholarship in, can a life be bifurcated, right? Is it appropriate for us to think about what is the good life and what is the good professional life? Or is there really just one life? So let's go off script just a little bit. Not that there's a script. And I would love to hear your thoughts on as we're preparing people to live well, is there a distinction between personal virtue and professional virtue in this context?
That is, as they used to say, the $64,000 question. Back when $64,000 was a lot of money.
I'll take it.
Uh,
Like if I was getting
it-
$64,000 for this session, I would be really happy.
so would I. So would I. Uh, in my own thinking, to my own point of view, I don't believe that there is a bifurcated life. I
Yeah.
believe we live a life that is, in a way, unified according to ethical and moral principles
Mhm.
by which we live professionally and in the world, as it
Mhm.
were.
Mhm.
So that when we approach professional ethics, how to work with each other, how to
Mhm.
lead an organization,
Mhm.
how to work within a community, and so forth. I think that is drawing from how we are to live our own personal lives as well.
Mhm.
So the set of virtues that one would embrace would be a unitary one that
Mhm.
would cover the personal life and the professional life seamlessly.
Mhm.
Uh, there may be people who disagree with that, but it's the way I've chosen to try to live my life
Yes.
and would urge people to do the same. Otherwise, conflicts will occur, and the resolution of those conflicts could be a very sticky matter
Yes.
personally and within one's own conscience. So I do believe that they are a unified set of principles by which we live.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate that well-reasoned answer, and not just because it aligns completely with my own.
Coincidentally.
So, one of the it's no longer a hot topic because it's one that I think has appropriately worked itself into conversations in foundational courses, but also in general professional conversation. Is Fobazi-Iter's influential idea of vocational awe, where there is a strong and effective critique at educating for professional ethics as a way of creating like a debt of service to something that is seen as higher than oneself. And I know that as people who I will speak for myself, I do see that what I do is part of a vocation. I know that I am quite vulnerable to this, to being perhaps uh, giving everything that I can for this thing that I believe in. Is there? I hope that there is. A way that ethicists can retain vocational passion and have it not lead to the diminution of self and self-care. And so, with all of that as setup, like how would you respond to this notion of vocational awe? And do you think that one must necessarily experience our work as a vocation in order to see it as part of a full holistic ethical life?
That is a profound question, John. And thanks first to Sophie for adding the link within the
Yes.
chat
Yes,
for
indeed.
that.
Thank you.
I think we are in concert here as well. I tend to view my career as a vocational set of actions
Mhm.
that, again, are unified,
Mhm.
that are part of a whole of being.
Mhm.
So, yes, I do think that, we use the word profession
Mhm.
most widely here, but we do engage in this as though it were a vocation.
Mhm.
As an aside, and by way of confessional, I was raised and still am Roman Catholic, and
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
my youth, I thought about joining the priesthood, as
Absolutely.
almost every Roman Catholic boy reaching teenage years does.
Yes.
And I determined at that time that if I were going to join the priesthood, I would join the Jesuit novitiate that was near my
Mhm.
hometown,
Mhm.
because the Jesuits are fond of learning,
Yes.
education, and action through learning.
Yes.
Uh, that said, I think that we are drawn to try to both live the good life and do the right thing
Yes.
through our professional being.
Mhm.
And we are drawn to this by means of the justice that we seek to achieve through our
Yes.
work, the rights that we seek to hold sacrosanct with
Mhm.
regard to the community and the people within our organizations,
Mhm.
as well as the daily living that we go through,
Mhm.
especially in interaction with others.
Mhm.
Uh, I can scarcely get through any presentation without bringing up phenomenology. But one of the tenets of phenomenology is to comprehend the complex dynamic between self and other.
Mhm.
And this, I think, holds true for our professional lives as well.
Mhm.
We are selves, but we are dealing with others on a daily
Yes.
basis. Others, as I say, within the organization, within the library, through leadership roles, through cooperation and
Yes.
collaboration, and also with community members
Yes.
as individual other consciousnesses.
Mhm.
So all of this does contribute to the vocational aspect
Mhm.
of what we consider librarianship to be. If, again, people may not agree with this,
Right.
but it is something that I hold pretty firmly to,
Mhm.
and apparently you do too.
I
So,
do too. I also studied with Jesuits. That's where I got my theological and moral philosophy training at Weston Jesuit School of Theology in Cambridge, where plucky East Coast potential Jesuits go to get their formation. So that's interesting, John. I didn't know that about that aspect of your biography. That's interesting.
yeah, yeah, it was the Jesuit novitiate near my hometown of Opelousas, Louisiana, and the Jesuit novitiate is in Grand Coteau, Louisiana, just 10 miles away, is a place where my father used to go to visit the priest to play handball. And those handball courts are still visible today. And the priests and the novitiates are still playing handball outdoors in that very same way. But it was my father who introduced me to the Jesuit spirit, the
Yes.
way of thinking and being.
Yeah.
So I come by
That's
it
marvelous.
honest.
So, thinking about this, you know, individual response within a broader corporate identity, the broader notion of professional body brings to mind frequent comments and critiques from our friend from Pi, Charles Sutton, who always does an effective job whenever I get too character ethicsy and too individually focused on reminding that there is another way to think of our ethical responsibilities beyond just individual growth, individual action, but instead one more focused on mutualism and interdependence. Could you say a little bit about that approach to ethics and if it finds life in your book as well?
It does not find strong life in the book, although one can read it into many passages throughout the process of writing the book and reading the book and absorbing it, I hope, into one's own action and
Yeah.
action-based life. It is something that I'm particularly cognizant of in the chapters that deal with ethical challenges today. So, for example, one of the kinds of communal approaches to ethics has to do with understanding and relating to the BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, people of color, so that this is integrated into our ethical sensibility as well. And it does get to a more collective sense of ethical action and moral being.
Yes.
In that way. As just one example, there are other examples
Absolutely
in those chapters and throughout the book that try to illustrate a concrete relationship to not just the other, but others.
Yes.
In the plural as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
And we all know that we are influenced by those with whom we identify.
Yes.
So we have to take that into account as part of our action-based living through librarianship, if you will.
Absolutely. And I think that goes back well to, what you're talking about with the language of the ninth principle, and the intent of it. In that principle, I think you see a clear intersection between sort of the traditional ethics code based dissemination of values and principles and this more collective justice orientation. Do you want to say a little bit more about the act of working with the COPE to create that principle and sort of how it left an impact?
Unfortunately, I didn't have any role in creating the principle.
Understood.
What we did have a role in is disseminating the principle. It was brand new when I joined the committee a few years ago. And I took it upon myself to do a couple of conference presentations.
Yes, indeed.
Focusing on the ninth principle, one of which was at the Elise annual conference. And for that, I drew from my Roman Catholic roots and the theologian Hans Küng. And it may have been his last book on global ethics.
Yes.
Looking at this from a worldwide standpoint and very much from a collective point of view. So I drew heavily from Küng on that particular perspective of what the ninth principle meant, while still bringing phenomenology into the picture, believe it or not.
I would expect no less.
For those of you out there, I'll just, as an aside, tell you, I do have a tattoo on my back that reads phenomenology, although in Greek. One of those little tidbits that you may or may not know about.
I don't know if that falls into too much information or if it just falls into confirming what we already suspected.
I think the latter.
So, thinking about our hosts, Library Juice, and the legacy of Rory Litwin and colleagues to be a steadfast supporter of critical librarianship, critical information literacy, and I would say broadly the social justice aspects of library services, brings to mind, in fact, a conversation that happened at that Elise panel on the ninth principle about justice and ethics. And so the two, I think, beyond the obvious contractual ethics and Rawlsian parallels, like the two are closely allied notions, ethics and justice, but they are different. And so what would you say are the main thing? I would argue that they're different. And so what would you say are the main contributions that ethicists like us can bring to people who are already deeply involved in doing justice work as part of their professional practice?
Well, you did mention John Rawls' name.
Yes.
I will say that I am influenced considerably by the work and thinking of Immanuel Kant.
Mhm.
And I know that may run counter to some people's ideas of ideal ethics,
Mhm.
but I do believe that his work, in conjunction with other branches of ethical thought,
Mhm.
gives a pretty solid foundation for us to move forward from.
Mhm.
Uh, and John Rawls is a Kantian,
Yes.
an unabashed Kantian,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
he wrote the book, A Theory of Justice,
Yep.
and a second edition of that book that enhanced some of his thought in many ways. And I follow his ideas of justice.
Mhm.
Primarily, I've read other people's, including Michael Walser's
Mhm.
work on justice, Amartya Sen,
Mm.
Michael Sandel, and others.
Mhm.
But I think what it comes down to, and I'll throw out something kind of extreme here, that all of those are commentaries on Rawls
Hmm.
in some way, shape, or form.
Rawls
They
would
may
agree with
be
you.
they,
Would have agreed with you.
they may be reacting to him,
Mhm.
and not without merit,
Yeah.
certainly. But I think that his work, not just in A Theory of Justice, but in his political essays
Yes.
more
Yes.
generally, uh, does draw out the ethics of justice.
Mhm.
Now, you maintain that the two are somewhat separate. Yes, I think they are somewhat separate,
Yes.
but I think there is an umbrella under which each resides.
Mhm.
And that umbrella is more broadly moral philosophy
Yes.
and how to treat others.
Yes.
Uh, some of you who are out there may be familiar with John Rawls' veil of ignorance.
Mhm.
If you're not, in short, what it means is when a person is put in a position to decide or to make a just decision about actions, then one should presume nothing about the person behind this veil of ignorance
Mhm.
and treat everybody equally
Mhm.
and equitably who would be so decided upon.
Mhm.
And I think that is something we need to revisit very strongly today, because there are injustices that are in the world. And I think some people have almost inherent unjust tendencies or
Mhm.
unjust tendencies, and they need to be countered in a moral perspective.
Mhm. Yeah, there's almost a rejection of any type of moral anthropology or foundational notion of human interstitial human dignity and human worth when all has been reduced to the transactional. Then of course there's no limit to how much people could be exploited for personal gain. And something like the the veil of ignorance is a conceptual foundation for empathy, even when that has been selected out for in society sometimes. The thinking about my kind of, not to sort of pivot to my thinking on it, but just very briefly, when I think of your title, Ethics and Morals, I do think of the importance of, though in the commonplace they're often conflated, I do think that it's interesting and worthwhile in this conversation about justice to think about how the two can influence ideas of justice, where ethics is exactly as you've mentioned. It gives us this framework for understanding the basic proposition of justice, and morals gives us, if one construes morals as a deeply felt and deeply believed notion of right and wrong, often, I would argue, often culturally transmitted, including professional culture, then in some ways, morals gives us the power to act towards justice from a position of certitude, which is very powerful and very needed. And ethics gives us a way to move towards justice from a position of uncertainty and provisionality, right? And so I don't know if you would like to speak more about the reason for breaking ethics and moral out in your book title, or if you have any thoughts on that.
Gosh, I don't know that I could add anything to what you just said about this. To grossly oversimplify things, morals might be considered according to the question, what is right?
Mm-hmm.
Ethics might be considered according to the question, what is the right thing to do?
Right. Yeah.
So in a sense, there is that distinction there.
Yeah.
And morality can certainly guide ethics.
Yes.
I don't think the opposite or the
Right.
corollary is in fact true.
Right.
I don't think ethics can guide morals.
Right.
So there is, in a sense, a kind of hierarchy,
Yeah.
but in a perhaps more effective sense, there is a kind of distinction to be made between the two.
Yes.
And other than that, you put your finger right on it.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have gotten two people who disagree to have this conversation. But this is fascinating to me anyway.
To me as well. I don't know if it's making for good theater or not, but it's certainly a rewarding conversation for me. Well, with that, and given an eye on the time, why don't we see if anyone in our audience has any questions for you, John, about your book or about phenomenology or about your other tattoos?
Or my other tattoos. There are 30 of them, by the way, mostly literary. So anybody have a question, you can shout it out
we'll
or
turn things
insert
over
it in chat and we can
Sophie
read
to,
it.
to
So,
parse.
That includes Sophie, if she has any questions that are been
Absolutely.
brought up about this. Please feel free to ask. While we're waiting and going back to the Jesuits, one of my
Yes.
favorite jokes, and it happens to be a Catholic joke, is a Benedictine priest and a Franciscan priest were in church one day, and the Benedictine says, well, Father, of course, you know that it's our order that's more favored in the eyes of God. And the Franciscan says, I have to disagree, Father. It is our order that's more favored in the eyes of God. They start disputing this and almost come to blows. And I say, wait, what are we doing here? We're in the house of God. I know. We'll write the question down on a sheet of paper and leave it on the altar and see if God, in his infinite wisdom, will deign to give us an answer. So they write out, which of our orders is more favored in your eyes? And they go in the next morning, and sure enough, there's an answer written there. It says, my sons, your orders are equally favored in my eyes. Signed, God, S.J. Society of Jesus.
Society of Jesus.
The Jesuits. So
I think another way of proving that the Jesuits are the favorite is who makes the wine and who gets to drink the wine. uh,
yes. So seeing no questions, we can continue our conversation, I guess, and see if that spurs some questions and
Absolutely.
answers. Uh,
So, what is so you are deserving of a moment to pause and rest on your laurels for this book. But once that moment is past, where do you see yourself taking this work going into the next part of the conversation related to it?
Actually, oh, wait, we have a question from Sophie. Do you feel like you've come to think about any of these themes or ideas differently having worked on this book? The answer has to be yes, because I had to pursue this as deeply as I possibly could. And so I found myself formulating some of these thoughts and ideas as I read and wrote.
Mhm.
It came to me, I don't know where at this point in my life, but somebody in my past informed me that writing is a way of thinking.
Mhm.
And that may have come from reading Walter Ah, for all I
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
But, and it's true. As I compose this, thoughts gel, come to fruition, and sometimes even surprise me when I express them and try to postulate why this is so.
Mhm.
So the writing definitely had a part to play in the formulation of the ideas, especially with respect to the last chapter. The, uh, the
The teaser that should not
proposing
be. Yep.
proposing how we should think and act today
Yeah.
and all of that. But to get back to your question, John, I've already taken this in one step with a journal article that should be published anytime now in the journal Globalization, Societies, and Education.
Mm.
And the title is From Neoliberalism to Authoritarianism,
Mm.
colon,
Mm.
Higher Education's Challenges.
Mm.
And in it, I draw from
Yeah.
actual events, statements, and occurrences in higher education today
Yeah.
to show that there is a neoliberal bent, an idea that we live according to transactional relationships that is sinking into authoritarianship. As an example from my own institution, about a year ago, the president slash chancellor of the University of Missouri sent out a note to all of the university community saying, you may be tempted to espouse some political views outside of the classroom. Be very careful when you do this, or there may be some unintended consequences, which I read as a threat
Oh
to
yeah. Yeah.
intellectual and academic freedom. I don't know if everybody read it thusly, but I certainly did. So that's one instance that I included in this article. But it wasn't all negative. I had recently read Cass Sunstein's latest book, Liberalism.
Mm.
And he envisions liberalism as a small L liberalism.
Mhm.
And that is equated with freedom,
Yes.
perhaps freedom with a capital F,
Mhm.
in all regards and in all aspects of life. So I draw from that way of thinking and try to conclude that the solution for higher education is to embrace small L liberalism
Mm.
in sense of freedom, so that there is, in the German sense, Lernfreiheit and Lehrfreiheit. the freedom to teach and the freedom to learn
Mm.
embedded in what the university stands for.
Mhm.
So I'm taking it
Yeah.
in that direction right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And this notion of capital L and lower L liberalism is an interesting dialogue with capital P and lowercase p progressivism as a motivating factor among many educators. And I won't say that it is a generational divide, but I do say that I see a strong shift in emphasis away from foundational principles and more towards organizing action in terms of responding to threats of totalitarianism. And so I'm very pleased that you're continuing to explore, because the more the lower L liberalism leading towards hopefully a doctrine of big F freedom, um, that because we need more than one tool in our tool belt, right? And when uh, is someone who is concerned with authoritarianism and totalitarianism, I want to see as many different types of responses, so that whatever works hopefully will take root.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't have phrased that better.
Yeah.
So,
So I wonder, so as a person, and we were speaking with Sophie before the session began, who sort of got drawn into this world of philosophy of librarianship, philosophy of information, and ethics for LAS practice, in part because of you. What advice do you have, John, for other people out there who might be passionate about these questions of meaning and significance and their impact on education and librarianship? Like how could someone get started along the path that you've blazed for folks?
wow. I don't know that I would recommend my path to anyone necessarily, but by way of background, my bachelor's degree is in English and I have a Master of Arts in English.
Mhm.
And in that, I read critical theory, literary critical theory,
Mhm.
and philosophy to some extent for those 2 degrees.
Mhm.
And that fascinated me. In fact, it was in the master's program that I was first introduced to Kant
Mhm.
and his thinking about duty, for lack of a better
Yeah.
word, although
Yeah.
that doesn't express it nearly comprehensively enough,
Right.
and other philosophers that came out of the literary theory course that was required of us as master's students. And it was an invaluable introduction to a way of thinking, which is what is most needed if one is going to pursue these kinds of matters. There's no substitute for reading a lot about theory in general and ethical theory in particular.
Mhm.
And as the book demonstrates, it is sweeping. It goes from not quite the beginnings of recorded time, but close to it until now.
Yeah.
And if you think no one has the answer yet, you're partly correct. Although there are some answers that are superior to other answers. And that becomes evident in the book, that if one is tempted to lean towards a particular way of thinking that may be categorized as utilitarian, well, there are some drawbacks to that. And I tried to detail some of the drawbacks within librarianship and information work. Whereas in some of the other sections, I tried to make the connection between what was stated years, sometimes centuries ago, and what we're experiencing today.
Yes.
So it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
But the one thing I would urge for people who are interested in this path is to pursue it. And that is to pursue it by way of critique. I wouldn't say critically, but critically is a fraught word.
Right.
But critique embraces the good and the ill of whatever it is you're addressing. And so take it upon yourself to look for what is worthwhile and what is not so much worthwhile in what you're thinking, reading, and embracing in that regard. And the other thing I would urge is to connect this to action, to lived lives of everybody involved with the profession, the vocation, the communities, etc. And that includes politics, because libraries are political organizations. By their very nature, public libraries are tax-based, so they are beholden in some way to the public treasure. Academic libraries are also based on appropriations from above. Government libraries, I don't need to say any more about them. Many special libraries are also
schools, absolutely.
schools.
Libraries.
Everything is politically grounded in some way, shape, or form. So realize that, and realize that there is no other way to be. One is necessarily political. So the political economy and ethics comes to the fore when one focuses on that particular element of libraries and librarianship, and the information world writ large as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. We act politically. We act within the realm of moral action in both our decision to act and our decision not to act, in our approach and in our avoidance, in our attention and then our ignorance. And so there is something about like thinking about the path as simply a choice to engage, and realize that the good life, right, will not just happen, right? The good society will not just happen. The good community won't just happen. You have to be more than just a witness. You have to be a participant.
And it's a process. If one is Aristotelian and adopts the notion of the good life, then one has to realize that you can't just stop midstream and say, I have lived a good life.
Right.
It isn't realized until the end.
That's right.
So it is a process, personally and collectively, organizationally and communally.
Yeah, we don't get to say the end.
Right? No.
Yeah.
No, until it is the end for us.
Exactly.
Anyway. And then somebody else decides.
And that's the goal, right? To do it as well as to be that to be that phenomenon, the person who is the exemplar for others, and that hopefully will take up the torch and carry it long after us, right?
Yeah.
So as we grow close to the end, again, not the end, but just the end of this session, I again extend the invitation to those in the audience to pose questions. But what I would love to do is, what is the one thing that you hope we learn from your book? Understanding that there is no spoilers in the final chapter to be revealed, but like, what is that seed that you hope to plant as a result of the work you've done?
I guess if there is one single seed that I would hope would could be sown and rise to fruition, is that this is a complex topic. It is a complex idea, and it is a complex way of being, and it's challenging. There are constant challenges that the world presents us to act or behave ethically or unethically, with the other in mind or without, with intentionality or without. So the lesson I would hope one would reach by the end of the book is a clearer understanding of what the path we're on is like, what it's shaped by, and how we have agency throughout to do the right thing, to determine how we should live.
Yeah.
So we are not mere vessels into which things are poured. No, we are acting agents throughout.
Well, that sounds pretty good to me.
Okay, good.
Well, I believe those are the questions that I had for you. Is there anything that you'd like to close with, my friend?
Not really, except to those in the audience, be sure to read John Burgess's work as well, because he's written a number of pieces that I think touch precisely on some of the challenges that we do face today. And I have cited him as well.
That is incredibly kind of you, John. Thank you so much.
And thank you for this conversation.